The remote roundtable is here, ready to kick off the summer season, and we're joined by Democratic political analyst Marianne Marsh and Republican political analyst Rob Gray. By the way, parenthetically, guys, I can't wait till we can all sit together.
Soon.
Which is close. Soon, right. Yeah, we're in the soon. We're going to cross the fingers, though. You just heard Danielle Allen. She isn't the only Democrat running for governor next year or even thinking about running for governor. But what, if anything, stood out to you in today's conversation? Let me start with you, Marianne.
Well, I think she's sort of the combination of Deval Patrick and Elizabeth Warren, neither of whom ran for office before, ran for two of the highest offices in the state and were successful. And she said COVID is the catalyst. So I think her test is going to be, without any experience, are you the best person to be governor to lead us out of this period, given everything that we have to rebuild? That's the test.
Rob, what do you think?
I think her background is a tough fit for the office of governor. Elizabeth Warren came out of Harvard for a U.S. Senate seat. I think people are much more willing to go with an academic and an idea person for that office versus governor, where they're looking for a manager with a business background. Deval Patrick did have that business background. Charlie Baker and Mitt Romney had that business background. So I think that'll be something that she has to overcome if she's going to be a serious candidate.
Acting Mayor Kim Janey got some good news from the courts this week. Her attempts to fire Police Commissioner Dennis White are looking good. But if he is fired, does former Mayor Marty Walsh still have a problem, Rob?
Well, I think this was good news for Marty Walsh, too. When the suit is out of the news, then Marty Walsh is out of the news. I think this hearing, we still have this hearing to come, and there could be some news coverage of that, but most likely he's going to be gone. He may file some type of employment lawsuit, but any sort of discovery or testimony in that is going to be way down the line. So I think Marty Walsh is maybe not out of hot water, but a little farther away from it.
Marianne, does he still have questions that he needs to answer?
Well, I think the Janey team has done a really good job trying to keep the focus on Marty Walsh. And let's remember, Marty Walsh is adamant that he knew nothing about this, and that if he did, he would have taken a different course. He said that in national interviews this week as well. So it is hard to imagine he would say that if that weren't true. So I think if you look down the road, I agree with Rob. More of this becomes focused on Janey and her actions to correct the Boston Police Department, which frankly looks like the Catholic Church in terms of covering up crimes these days. So she's got 3 months to do that, and I think that is going to be a big part of whether she wins the office outright or not. But Walsh isn't quite out of the woods yet.
Well, let's talk about the Holyoke Soldiers Home and the governor's connection to it. The troubles at the home now are squarely on the governor's front steps. He has no more wiggle room. Should this be a factor at all in his decision to run for re-election? Marianne, let me start with you.
I don't think it's a factor in his decision to run. I think it could be a factor if he does run, and here's why. I think he should go back to the legislature and testify. You have two reports out there that are pretty different. The independent report that says one thing and lays little blame, if any, on the Baker administration. Another report out there from the legislature that is far more definitive and far more fact-based. I think those two things need to be reconciled. We see too much in politics right now of let's just move on to the next thing. Well, the fact is 76 veterans died because of political hiring, malpractice, and mismanagement. And those people defended our rights and our democracy. And instead, they died not on a battlefield, but in a home that was built to take care of them, not kill them. And that's exactly what happened.
Rob, where does the governor sit in his thinking about running for re-election in the Holyoke Soldiers Home? Where's that fit?
Well, I don't think Charlie Baker fears any opponent. His numbers are very good. I think the only thing impacting his decision making is whether he wants to do the job for 12 years versus 8 years. So I think that's his decision making. He'll certainly have to defend this, and I'm sure he will if he decides to run for re-election.
The George Floyd one-year anniversary reminds us the former mayor promised major police reforms within 180 days. That was last October. Few have materialized. Walsh did leave after 3 months. So who's more responsible for the inaction? Is it Walsh? Is it acting Mayor Kim Janey? Or is it the lack of a permanent commissioner? Let's start with you, Rob.
Well, I think some of the reforms did materialize in the form of resource cuts to police departments. And if you look at the FBI statistics for the last 3 months of 2020, homicides were up in cities over 1 million people by 32%. So what's happening is practicality is coming back into the situation. And these woke politicians who played to the masses, who wanted these, major reforms, restrictions, and funding cuts, defunding police, have now gone by the wayside because they know they have to manage the cities, and police are a key part of that. So I think some of the wokeness is leaving the nest here.
Marianne, do more changes are needed, do you think?
Of course. We're beyond reform. We're about replacement. The culture is corrupt. It is bad. And when you have police who cover up crimes instead of prosecuting them, that is a huge problem. But Kim Janey's in, again, for a big test. We've said this for weeks now. There's a reason this week she did a press conference about the summer potential crime surge this summer. So all of that's going to get tested, and she's going to be tested too. She's got 3 months before the primary to show people that she can create change and keep the city safe. It's a great opportunity for her, and her opponents are going to be after her like crazy to make sure she doesn't succeed.
Which brings us perfectly to this next topic. Annissa Essaibi-George now has the Firefighters Union endorsement, as well as former Commissioner William Gross's. But the question, Robin, let me start with you. The question is, does she or anyone want the police union's endorsement at this point?
She would take it in a heartbeat, and so would the rest of the candidates. The voters still appreciate and respect the police. Is there a small minority who don't? Certainly, but practicality is coming back into the equation here as people see crime on the rise because of some of the cuts and anti-police rhetoric that was out there. So they'd all be happy to have it. They're in a large field trying to break out, and a big endorsement like that certainly helps.
Marianne, what do you think? Big endorsement helps?
No. I mean, this is now about Annissa Essaibi-George's judgment, accepting the endorsement of Willie Gross, who knew about White's domestic violence conduct, promoted him, attested for him, supported him to replace him as commissioner, and yet she took his endorsement still? Yes, she's raising money from Boston Police. Yes, she's got some votes from them, but most of them don't live in Boston. But this is about her judgment. And by the way, if that's her judgment and she's mayor, how's she going to handle the Boston Police Department? What changes do you think are going to happen, if any? So I understand the political strategy of trying to thread that needle to the right of center and get the police union, but boy, oh boy, that says something that she has not yet put at least the Heisman out on that endorsement, if not more.
The pose you're talking about, right?